Hey everyone, it's Nigel Broad here for Perfect Circuit. In this video we're going to take a look at the basics of integrating a Eurorack modular system with your DAW. So why would you want to get into modular when you can make pretty much any type of music within your DAW? Well, for one, it's undeniably a lot of fun. But besides that, a modular system can provide an endless source of inspiration beyond the computer screen. It's ideal for sound design and of course performance. I mean, it's kind of hard to turn two knobs at once in your DAW with just a mouse, right? Anyway, maybe you've just bought your first modular system, or perhaps you're just modular curious. Either way, if you're unsure of how it's all going to work with your DAW, well, don't worry, all will be revealed. So, let's get into it. Okay, so let's break this down. There's just two things you really need to think about with a modular system, and that's audio and control voltage. I'm also lumping gates, triggers and clocks under control voltage, but more on that later. Now, most modules are pretty forgiving about where you patch your audio or control voltage signals, so feel free to mix and match. You won't break anything. However, if you try hard enough, it is possible to cause damage to speakers, headphones, or more importantly, your ears. So it's best to know what's what, and really it all comes down to frequency. Audio is at a much higher frequency than a control voltage signal, say 20 Hz to 20 kHz, while CV is generally less than 20 Hz. Of course, there's a little more to it than that. I haven't mentioned how AC and DC plays into it, for example, but if you just focus on the frequency for now, and remember, it's all just voltage anyway, you'll be golden. Alright, with that out of the way, let's make some sound. Now, before we get into how this all works with your DAW, let's talk about modular basics, starting with the foundation of any modular patch, the oscillator. I'm going to use the STO from Make Noise in this example, but really, any oscillator will do. So if I take the output of STO to the modular rig's output, I get a drone. I can sweep the frequency, but that's pretty much it. That, folks, is the most basic modular patch you can get. Okay, enough of that. Now, unless you're really into minimalism, you're going to want more than a single oscillator. At minimum, apart from said oscillator module, you'll need a VCA or voltage controlled amplifier, a VCF or voltage controlled filter, an envelope generator of some sort, and optionally, an LFO or low frequency oscillator. Oh, and a keyboard or sequencer of some sort, unless you're really into drones. With the basics out of the way, let's look at how this all works with your DAW. So how do we get audio out of our modular system into the DAW? Okay, I'll assume you have some sort of audio interface connected to your DAW. Going back to our drone, you could take that direct output from the oscillator, or any module's audio output in fact, and plug it directly into an input on your audio interface. Now that signal will be quite hot, in other words, really high level, so some sort of output module is recommended. Not essential, but it kinda helps. I'm using a Bufako 1U output module here, which connects directly to the 1/4" jacks on the case. But there really is a lot of other output modules to choose from, usually pretty affordable too. So out of the oscillator, into the output module, which means I can also control the level here, and out of the case into my audio interface and my DAW. I'm using Ableton Live, but it's going to be a similar story regardless of your particular flavor of DAW. Okay, so in Ableton Live here, I'm going to use this audio track, track 3, and select the input my modular is connected to. I'm using a stereo input even though I've only got a mono signal. Another advantage of using an output module is that it can sum a mono signal to stereo, if you so desire. Switching the monitor to in, and I should hear that familiar drone. Ah, yes, I turned the level down, didn't I? Okay, there it is. Okay, so we have audio, and that's half the battle. So again, unless you're just really into drones, and there's nothing wrong with that, you're going to want to control this thing somehow, which is where control voltage comes in. And since we're looking to integrate our modular system with our DAW, we'll want that control to come from, well, our DAW. Since modular systems use control voltage, whether that's to generate pitch, gates, triggers, or even a clock signal, that's what our DAW needs to use. The easiest and by far the simplest method to bridge that DAW modular gap is with MIDI, specifically a MIDI to CV gate module, such as this IntelliGel Design's MIDI 1U module. Depending on the module, you'll most commonly get either MIDI over USB or the traditional 5-pin MIDI affair, or both. Again, depending on the module, those physical connectors can appear on the front panel of the module or connect internally to jack sockets on the case, as this MIDI 1U module does. From there, you'll get a bunch of 3.5mm jack sockets that provide all the control voltage goodness your Eurorack modules need. Okay, so let's set up a simple patch and control it through Ableton Live. I'll start with an oscillator, the STO again, but this time use the variable shape output since it's a bit more sonically interesting. And patch its audio out into a filter, in this case ripples from Mutable Instruments. I'll take that output into a VCA like this Mutable Instruments Veils, and from there to the output module. Aha! The drone is back! I'll take the pitch out from the MIDI to CV module into the 1 volt per octave input of STO. Back over in Ableton Live, I'll use this MIDI track here and set its MIDI 2 to MIDI DIN 2 out. I'm using an Arturia AudioFuse 16 rig audio interface, which quite handily has built-in MIDI 5-pin DIN connectors. Of course, you'll select whatever MIDI interface you have connected to your modular. Oh, and importantly, at least for now, we're just using one-way MIDI here, out from Ableton Live to in on the modular. MIDI from I'll leave at all ins, since whatever keyboard or controller you have connected to Ableton Live is fine. Alright, switch to monitor in and... Yep, we now have a pitched drone. Okay, so far so good, but we'll want to have it react to a key on-off, in other words, a gate. So I'll take the gate out from the MIDI to CV module into the control input of the VCA. Better, but it's still just a simple on-off affair. So let's use an envelope generator to smooth things out. In this case, Erica Synth's Black EG. I'll move that gate out to the gate in of the envelope generator. And the out of the envelope generator to the control input of the VCA. And that should be it. A few tweaks here and there. And Bob's your uncle. So what we have here is a pretty basic monosynth controlled with Ableton Live via MIDI. Great, but let's take things a step further. So let's say you're in a bit of a bind and don't have a MIDI to CV gate module or device. Is there another way to control your rig? Why, yes, actually, there is. If your audio interface provides DC coupled outputs, and a lot of modern day audio interfaces do, then you're in luck. You can send control voltage straight out of your audio interface, no MIDI required. On the software side, Ableton Live comes with CV Tools, which is a pack of 10 devices that generate and receive pitch, control, clock, and trigger CV. There's also third-party tools such as Expert Sleeper's Silent Way, a suite of 18 plugins which provides a plethora of ways to manipulate your modular. But there's one more thing you'll need to make this all work, and that's a 1/4 inch to 3.5mm cable, and not just any cable, specifically a floating ring cable. Okay, so enough talk, let's give it a go. Again, I'm going to keep things simple and use Ableton Live to control my modular's pitch and gate, but this time, no MIDI. Okay, so I'll take one of my oh-so-special floating ring cables and plug it into output 5 of my audio interface, and into the 1 volt per octave input of STO. I'll take another floating ring cable and plug it into output 6 of my audio interface and into the gate in of the envelope generator. Now, remember earlier when I said you can't really do any damage patching audio and CV in a modular system? Well, in this case, you'll want to be particularly careful not to patch your DC coupled outputs to your speakers, or in fact to anything not CV related. Back over in Ableton Live, I'll create a new MIDI track. Alright, I need to find CV tools in the browser. Okay, and I'll take CV instrument and drop it onto that new MIDI track. CV instrument pretty much just routes CV and gate to a track for you, along with audio to make things even easier. So I'll set audio from to external in and my Eurorack inputs. CV pitch to output 5 and CV gate to output 6. And we have control. Awesome. Except you may have noticed it's a bit out of tune with itself. Well, that's a common challenge with Modular, but one that's easily fixed by hitting this cunningly named calibrate button. Follow the directions and perfect. Now, of course, you can get really deep with this. Use MIDI CV for pitch and gate, and CV tools with a DC coupled output for modulation. Oh, and I should mention, if you have push 3, you can configure its pedal pulse to work with control voltage. So, no DC coupled interface required. So this was just a basic look at integrating a Eurorack modular system with your DAW. As your system grows, things can get pretty complex pretty quickly. For example, I didn't mention syncing between your DAW and your modular. If you're using any sort of sequencer or time-based effect in your rig, you'll need to use a clock signal from your DAW to keep time, which is a subject for another video. Alright, so that's about all I have to share for this video. I hope it's been helpful. Keep making music, and I'll see you next time.